Welcome back to the last hour of the CHS Exchange. And this hour we are going to spend on reflections and closing remarks. We have had two people, Alexandra and Kate, who have been doing an amazing job of listening, reflecting, and showing us what we have been discussing. And we will start with Alexandra showing us her graphic recording, and then followed by Kate, who will lead us through her reflection session and a dialogue with all of a few people from the audience. So Alexandra.
Thank you, Stanley, and thank you everyone for the precious sharing of today. So today we started with a keynote from Jan Egeland, who talked about which is the future of the Grand Bargain and the participation revolution, focusing on the fact that there is a need to fill in the gap between the needs of the people we serve and how to fulfill them. And here the key is listen and ask. So put those people in the center, as we already talked about it yesterday. And now there is no more time to lose on this. In this revolution, which is important, is to have goals that are revolutionary and keep on in this progress. As despite the long journey, more progresses have been created than failures. Then we had a really fulfilling panel discussion about how to work better together to create change. And here what has been highlighted is the need of a systemic change for systemic solutions, where brave leaders are needed, and those are only a part of it, of course. And this systemic change calls for actions, and those action needs to be based on the needs of the community we serve. So here again, listening is an important part of this process. And then a reflection of the action has been done about, like, are those actions really taken after all the protocol that has been followed? And slow progresses are here, and a long journey has been done. So always put the focus on this. And then in the afternoon, some workshop took place about data collection and reporting for CEH, and also understanding how to close the gap. And then one about the tension that there is between the standards proposed by CHS and contextualized approaches. And here a bit of space for the reflection of the next hour, who will be held by Kate. So now I leave her the word.
Hello. Hello, everybody. It's so lovely to be back here again. And I actually want to take us back to day one a little bit. I'm going to reflect day three, but I want to seeing the threads. So I want you to remember that in day one, the overview was about leadership affected by crisis, and nothing about us without us. And this was about the different areas and how we had to listen to the people for inclusivity. We also, on day two, which was about shifting the power balance, it was, really amazing panels. There was so much information yesterday, which leads me to the overview of that. I'll just go down to my overview, which I think was really quite, again, it's about the shift. Any shift in power is a political process, and also that employing local people to carry out their own agenda, get funding to local people, and that all voices matter. And so today was much more about how are you going to do it? What is the overview of day two? So my one key word that I kept on hearing was listen. I don't know if anyone else heard that, but Tanya, in her wonderful introduction to Jan Egeland, was really saying about how we need to listen to the people that you're helping. And Jan Egeland also was talking about this importance of listening to the people on the ground. This real feeling that he was speaking to some Afghan women, and they were saying, we have needs, and we need to hear their words. And this is what he said. He said, we don't need naive listening, but with orders from the mothers on the ground to save their lives. What do they need? And he said his two hopes were that donors would be less obsessed with taxpayers' money and the tabloids' feedback. And his second hope was that you as the community would be less keen on promoting your logos and getting your piece of the cake, but putting people at the center of all decision making. So that was an amazing keynote speech this morning. And then in the panel discussion, this key message of listen and act, and listening needs action. And I thought it was very interesting, Pierre's discussion about there needs to be political will to use the tools. And he repeatedly said, I think on 3 different occasions, we have the tools, but we need the will to use them. There are lots of people using them. There are the tools. The CHS Alliance have those tools, but we need to increase the use of the tools for this standardization and verification. But also, Meg Sattler was saying that we need to make sure that, yes, you need systematic change, but you need to really shake up things, really need to get aid to the people that need it, because some people were getting this aid, selling it in order to get what they really needed. So you need to know what they need in order to, to make sure that they don't sell things that you're giving them that they don't need. There was a beautiful question, I can't see it on here right now, but I remember there was this beautiful question that she said about, what do you need that isn't cash that we can do to support you? So there were some great questions that arose from the session in the panel. And then in the workshops, they were so rich, the workshops. I felt as if I wanted to have one of those little magic spells that I could be in all these different places at once. So I tried my best. But in the first workshop, there was 4 different speakers that were talking about the importance of comparable data, this comparative information right across the sector was another key message I kept on hearing. And if people are coming up and responding to the call outs, and if they are negative or challenges, that this speaker, Mary Robinson, was saying, please don't make it punitive, make it a learning environment, so that there is this mutual learning. We need to, prioritize data protection, of course, but make sure that we're gathering information so that people feel as that it's a positive thing rather than negative. And also the next speaker, Gilbert, was talking about the importance of time management. And I've heard this even in some of the networking events that I've been having, that, on the ground, if people have got less of the funding than the larger organizations, they need to be able to manage their time, because sometimes organizations are understaffed. But the importance of being the voices of the survivor. And then this other speaker, Marta Valdez, was talking about the importance of what are the plans and the key challenges, and that we need to look for quality data that improves our practice. So there's this feeling of good data, but also the voice of the people, and that implemented with standardization. And in the second workshop, it was about closing the accountability gap, and really rich conversations, both in the breakout rooms and in the in the main sectors, and the importance of real engagement, real participatory engagement. This real key word again, listen to what people really, really need. And this working across both the individual and the institutional. And again, these lines that are drawn, like they have to start merging, and people need to speak as one, hearing each other, both from the individual to the on the ground, to the national, to the international, everybody listening to each other. And I thought there was this really lovely slide that Talas Chamas mentioned, that trust is built when they see their words put into action. So it's all very well having focus groups, but they need to see that those focus groups lead to that action, because when you get that action, then people trust their voice will be heard. And the importance to talk also to governments to make sure that these ideas are implemented at the high level. So it's the macro level, the micro level, making sure that all these different partners are working together with one vision. And in the third workshop, this idea of standardized or contextualized, and the importance of using language. And I heard this again as a thread, this idea that language is key. We need to speak to all people, no matter their level of literacy, maybe using much more pictorial language to help everybody be part of the conversation. It's important to contextualize the information, but there was this thing, although aiming for compliance, some steps are not possible to be standardized as we work with partners. So the complexity of working with partnerships, the need for bespokeness in partnerships, but also the flexibility in for the bespokeness, but the standardization. And this seems to be the challenge that a lot of you are discussing. And also in the breakout room that I was in, it was very interesting that they were talking about the cultural side of it. Yesterday, we talked about the cultural side of it being a positive thing sometimes, because people were going back to their villages and utilizing their traditions, but also the fact that when these larger organizations come in, that the local people don't necessarily speak up. I've experienced that in my trips to various places in the African continent, that sometimes people really need to be brought to the table so that they feel comfortable to speak up to all the different organizations. Standardization needs to not be a tick box exercise. It needs to have integrity and depth. And people have used the word nuance in previous days as well, to have these community consultations. So for me, the overview of today, right from Jan to all the workshops, is listen to the needs, get money to where it matters. There needs to be systematic change. There needs to be leadership accountability. You need to use the accountability tools, but you need to all listen to each other. And I hope that gives a nice overview of not just today, but the overview and hearing some of the threads. So I'm going to now unshare my my board, and I'm hoping now that what we can do is that we can really try to think about what are the areas that we can deep dive into this, and hopefully we can now broaden this out to a deeper discussion into the dialogue. And would it be possible to bring some of the individuals up into the dialogue discussion? Thank you very much. So dialogue is a word that a lot of people use at the moment, but I find it one of the most powerful ways for loads of different people to have their voice heard. And actually, if you have longer than we do have today, although we do have quite a substantial time to have this dialogue, then it means that we can really drill into some of the key areas that were discussed over the last 3 days. The purpose of dialogue is not to show up with pre-prepared answers, pre-prepared thoughts, but to explore in the moment how we can deal with these things in the future. So what I would like to do is, we've asked a few people to come along today and to share their thoughts. And I would like to go round in a circle technique, which is just simply asking everybody what are their thoughts from the last 3 days, particularly today. And then we will go into a dialogue. And if anyone in the audience that's not on the stage would like to comment, please feel free to put your comments in the chat, and we'll see if we can bring them in some shape and form. So I have Rehma there in my first box. Would you like to share your thoughts from today? Your one thought from today, ideally in 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this session. My main reflection on the session is about power dynamics, and it made me reflect on the challenges that local and national organizations go through in the work that we do to reach the people affected by crisis. Power dynamics was presented yesterday by a session that was chaired by Susan and Alex Cole Hamilton. And I think it was very interesting to think about how power dynamics really affect the kind of work that we do, because power dynamics affect the funding. So it brings in the donors. As much as local organizations and national organizations, we need to put in place systems, procedures, and policies to be able to receive funding. I think donors also need to be quite flexible in terms of the way they give out the money. There's need to be flexible in terms of the processes that we go through. There's tedious procedures of writing proposals, but also the multiple due diligences that different donors, subject the local organizations to do. And
Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry if I have to cut you short. I might have to say it in the interest of time to move it on, but if we go around, then we'll have a way to explore that a little bit later. Samreen, if you can say your one thought or your thoughts from the sessions.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat. Actually, what I learned, I actually want to let the donors know the communities sometimes don't need just aid. Like if we talk about the refugees I addressed yesterday, so they also need some sort of entertainment, some sort of things that make this pain and the situation ease. So all they need is just interest what they are actually facing and what they actually need. The people say is not always about the ad, but also they want some rights as well, as the Grace address, as we saw the video of Uganda refugees. So I want just to let the donors know the refugees or the crisis affected people just don't need aid. They need your emotions as well. They need your some entertainment, some mental health as well. So I would like to suggest to the donors to be more flexible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Bona.
Thank you, Kate. I had a chance to reflect on first day, and then I want to continue on that by saying we know the problems. We have discussed them. We need now action. I see actions at 3 levels. One is at individual level. We all need to change our attitude on the ground. I see action at the organizational level. This is a call for all leaders in the organizations to take action and show the example to staff. And then I see action at sector level. Now, this is the call for all decision makers, everybody who is influencing and affecting the sector, humanitarian coordinators, UN agency director, everyone needs to take action. When I'm talking about action, we see sometimes we have commitment commitment needs to be proved. So if you can measure it, you can improve it. So I would like everybody to take action and try also to measure and prove what is being done and improve when we see weaknesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your thought, Adrienne, pardon.
Thank you. I will echo what colleagues have said. I think two things have really striken me in the past few days. One is the idea that time is up. We talked on day one about being impatient. I think this is really a key takeaway from those discussions, that time is really up. We've known for years and years what we need to do: be more accountable, put people at the center, etc. We have the tools to do it. They exist. We have tools to measure how we are accountable. They exist with CHS verification. So now really time is up. And the second thought that really struck me is systemic change, and how that happens. I think donors have this key role of the donors are the ones who can really pull the trigger. A lot of stakeholders, Bona mentioned them, have a role to play, but donors can really pull the trigger. Donors need to change their requirements towards organizations. They also need to demand CHS verification, certification if that's possible. They need to fund it as well, so that it does not become an additional barrier to smaller national organizations. And they need to make efforts to harmonize those requirements about due diligence, so that all organizations in the system make substantial savings at responding to those fair, legitimate requirements. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. John?
Just to applaud Adrienne's perspectives there, absolutely, I think I'm 100% with him. There are a few phrases I picked up today, such as social accountability and intergenerational dialogue. Mr. Egeland at the beginning gave us a real sense of someone who is hugely motivated and also impatient. And so I think that's another thing that we need to take away. We can't wait, and it's got to come from the leadership, I think. And one way of perhaps mobilizing a change of mindset is through intergenerational dialogue. I think we need to look. If we look at the impact of climate change activism, Greta Thunberg, for example, has been a phenomenon, and I'm wondering why there isn't a similar movement around humanitarian, the delivery of humanitarian aid, which is a massive industry. What are we doing wrong?
Lovely, thank you, John. Stanley.
Thank you, Kate. I think to summarize from what I hear from this panel, I would go back to some of the things that were said today. For example, Jan talked about listening to the voices of the people on the ground, so that we can hear the mother with the number five kids who is saying, I need to feed my children and I need support to do that. But to be able to listen from that perspective, we need to create safe spaces that Emily was talking about, Emily from the LGBT community yesterday on day one, that spaces of care where people can feel they can trust and be heard by the people that they are talking to or they are working with. And then Bona talked about bringing the human in the humanitarian, so that we can actually reconnect to the reasons why we are doing this work, and then respect that other people are also human. And so bringing this inclusion and sort of unity of purpose back to the center of what we do.
Wonderful. And now what I'm going to do is kind of, you've all shared your thoughts from today and from the last few days. And now I'm going to ask you if who would like to respond. And please, now what I'm going to ask you to do is come in off the back. If you have a thought that triggers a thought from yourself, then please feel free to come next. So who would like to go to respond to some of those comments from today?
May I jump in?
Yes, of course.
I would like to echo something that Samarin said about people when they are seen in the difficult situations. People, they don't just need aids, because they need a discussion. They need something, because people are doing something for themselves. So I want to come to the idea of supporting the initiatives that people are taking, not just bringing something new necessarily, but how, and if you link that to the young element of listening, just listen, support, consider that there are efforts already being done through the solidarity of people, just to take that into consideration strongly. Thank you.
So listen, support, and then consider.
Thank you.
Who'd like to build on that thought? Rahima, are you coming in now?
Yeah, I wanted to build on what Adrian mentioned about time being up. I think a lot of stage and a lot of foundation has been made, and I think it's time to take action. We have lots of movements that are going on, and I think now indeed it's time to take action. And again, reflecting on the words of Ian Egeland when he was opening, he mentioned and he said, if it is not now, then when? And I think the time indeed is now. So I think we need to consolidate all the efforts and really get moving in whatever that we do. Thank you.
John.
I'm interested in the argument that there needs to be a more lightweight approach from donors as to their audit requirements, and I think that can be interpreted very widely, not just financial audit, but also some of their due diligence processes. And I think this is where the CHS Alliance and the CHS, the standard itself, can be can have a major impact. I think if we can promote the standard, particularly through the revision process, if we can promote it as an engine of due diligence, so that organizations and communities that are working within that framework can be fast-tracked. I think that would be a good response to that cry.
Who'd like to build on that? Yes, Adrian.
The only comment I'd like to add is that for what we describe to work, it's important to understand the word donor here as a generic word describing all the entities who somewhere in the system, from say the institutional donor, ECHO, FCD, or who else, to the organization on the ground delivering the service to the people who need it. You have sometimes a chain of entities within that journey, UN agencies, international NGOs, small and national NGOs, etc., etc. So it's important that donors understand really as in its broader sense, and that it refers to all the organization who will then partner with another organization, transiting the funds through that other organization.
Thoughts? Bona?
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to echo what is being said. If we don't provide resources to what we say we want to do, we won't be able to do it. To echo, yeah, put resources in it, commit, do action, and put resource in it. Otherwise, we won't be able to do it as we want. Thank you.
I want to build up on what Adrian was saying about the power of the money and also the power that it brings to the power dynamics that it brings, but also that it could be an incentive for changing mindsets, for bringing broader and more bold leadership for people who are in power and in positions of power. But this could also be an incentive for the local organizations to take a standard like CHS and apply it so that they are consistent in their reporting. They are also consistent in their delivery.
Lovely. Samreen?
Yeah. So I just want to add one thing, that if we follow the CHS commitments and if we want to just respond timely, so it is difficult for the local organization who are working in the ground actually, because the donors have so many protocols in releasing the proposals, then accepting the proposal, then fund releasing and all. So if the donors can be a little bit sensitive about about the crisis, maybe the emergency response, disaster response can be utilized. Maybe we can get the agreement done, because the crisis of disaster, maybe the natural disasters occurs suddenly, but the disaster related to the weather, they are also have some time limits, and they also need the timely support. So the donor needs to just unfollow the protocols for emergency situation. Maybe the fund releasing can be released accordingly, because we do have the government assurance policies as well within the Pakistan. If I say, we need to get the NOCs done, we need to get the MOU done, so it is really 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 hard to respond timely. So I would suggest if we could work on that as well.
Someone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kate, my last reflection is on encouraging the national and local organizations. As John mentioned, that we need to really consider signing up for CHS as members, first of all, but also take an opportunity of the different assessments that are there. We have self-assessment, we have independent verification and others. And I think it's a good opportunity to really improve on the local organization systems and policies, and so that they are attractive to the donors. Thank you.
Adrian?
Stanley, go first. I think we both wanted to echo what Samrin said.
That's very kind of you, Adrian. The thought that comes to mind was that the capacity of communities to respond is actually built way before the disaster happens. And so this is where the discussion we had in the morning about the grand bargain and also the nexus becomes very critical. That can we bring those things together so that the capacity is built before the disaster happens? And we saw heard yesterday about good examples at the local level where some communities have the capacity to respond, and they do respond more timely and more effectively sometimes than the national and international donors. I mean, NGOs.
Who'd like to come in there? This, building on from that timeliness, capacity built before the disaster.
I was just going to give another round of support for what Samrin said before about the crucial importance of donors. So beyond what I said before, but about making sure that their requirements allow organizations, allow the humanitarian actors to apply what we define as quality and accountability. And we often hear through the verification on the CHS, we often hear organizations coming with this fair point about, it's difficult for us to comply with this requirement because of donors' requirement. So that is absolutely true. Thank you.
Bona?
To continue building on that, I want to say for national organizations, we are asking donors to be flexible to add resources, because we know one of the challenges is that they don't have overhead costs to do this. Everything that we are asking as improvement is something that is additional to them. So we want them to do that. And I want to reflect also on the fact that we say we don't want this to be a punitive environment. We all need to support the learning process that we are getting through the CHS verification. So invitation again to all national organizations, get on board, take ownership also of the standard and the process, and then stay with us, because we all need to collectively improve. So it's up to you to get on board, contact us, come and take the verification process for you. Thank you.
Rima, were you going to come in there?
I had already made my comments, but really emphasizing on the local organizations and the flexibility of the donors, as my colleagues have mentioned. I think it's very important that they take that action. Thank you.
It's interesting to hear from you, because Rima, you are on the ground as well, and I know that you work a lot in mental health, and So it's really interesting to hear that point of view. So we're talking about the timeliness of support. Samreen was talking about the importance of donors to be more sensitive and flexible. Any other thoughts to deepen that a little bit more? Yes, John.
Jan Egeland this morning also talked about donors being more bold and being prepared to tackle what we call in the UK the tabloid press. That would be the kind of the populist press, which is very much opposed to spending money outside of the country on aid and so on. And I think that really will cause a lot of nervousness in lots of organizations that tackling the tabloid press and the misrepresentation of aid is a very difficult political choice. And it's very hard, I think, for established leadership of big organizations to put themselves in that position. I think it's very brave of Jan Egeland to say it, and he clearly lives by that creed. But it is very difficult for many organizations to tackle that issue.
Who'd like to take up that discussion?
Yeah, I think, John, you're very right, because looking at what is happening on the ground and being on the ground, I have first-hand experience where you find that you enter into a partnership with an international organization, and then you're doing much more than what they're doing. You're given 70% of the targets, but you get 30% of the budget. And you're not able to go onto the table and negotiate to get increased funding. And then at the end of the day, you're expected to deliver. So I'm looking forward to the time when those power dynamics can be reversed, where local and national NGOs will get into the negotiation board, into the boardroom, and put their foot down and say, without 50% of the budget, we are not going to implement. But for now, you get 30%, you have 80% of the targets, and you pay your staff very miserably compared to the expatriates, and yet you're doing a lot more work. So I'm looking forward to the time when those power dynamics are kind of reversed, and local organizations have a voice to negotiate for what is equitably theirs. Thank you.
Bona?
I really like what you said, Rima. And then we have seen, yesterday we saw also that there are initiatives on the ground, power is being taken. And I just want to say, I'm very glad when we say we have problem and national organization, individuals in countries also pushing and putting the word on the table to make that change. So I'll continue to encourage national and local organizations to continue taking the power, taking the leadership. It's not just we wait for others to give us the power, we can also take the power. Thank you.
Sabrina, have you got any comments on that? Samreen?
Yeah, so actually, I will second the Bona's statement that we have to take in the power rather than to just wait to give someone to give us. We should take the power. We should negotiate with the donors before and after the implementation, and we can negotiate at a very early stage as well. So all the if I just recall the grain bargain talk, so it will also working on that, the grain bargain. We are working on the localization. So the localization mean is to give the power to the local organization who are working at the front line. So it is something that we also want the NGOs and the local actors to be in the communication loop within the communities. The communities where we are saying that the communities must have to say in the implementation, so the local actors also know the reality, the ground reality. The donors needs to talk with us as well. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Rosa, I think you might have some comments from the audience. Is that correct? Great. So we've just brought up from Gareth Price-Jones. Thank you so much, everyone, both for the points. Hugely useful. Keep up the good work. So are there any other thoughts from this idea of the grand bargain being much more localized, early stage negotiations? Is there anything that anyone else has got some thoughts of?
I can see if I can say this in a way that is more loving and caring, which is that if the answer to local leadership is donor, then I think we are asking the wrong question. What comes to mind is the example that was given yesterday, that there are local disasters that are happening now as a result of of climate change. And we are seeing a response that is targeted and is contextual, because of the people who are living the disaster. They understand their environment, they understand their context. They don't have to wait for national governments even to. And so we are saying local leadership is arising out of the necessity that there is no one else who will come and solve our problems.
Okay, and it would be lovely to hear from people in the audience about what they're thinking with regards to this conversation. But absolutely, what Stanley was talking about, this idea of the local people understand the context. So we need to. There was talk about local leadership on day one as well, wasn't there? About how to develop that leadership. Would anyone like to come in and develop that idea? How is local leadership developed and brought forward? Yes, Rahima.
Yeah, building on to what Stanley mentioned, and what I also mentioned before, is that I think as local organizations and national organizations, they need to, get up and claim power. We shouldn't sit back and wait for the international organizations to come and hand over the leadership to us. I think we need to come up together as a force, and then improve ourselves, make sure that we are attractive to be able, because asking for power when you're not able to take lead, I think it's a challenge. So there's a lot that we need to do with ourselves, first of all, make ourselves accountable to the donors, but also to the communities, and then move forth and claim the leadership that we were talking about. So there's quite a bit of what we need to do as local organizations to be able to match and to be able to match the international standards. Thank you.
So there's a talk of taking the power, but also it's difficult to be at the table of power. So how can you do that? What's the process? Anyone want to come in on that?
Katie, yeah. I think it's building our capacity and being ready. Are we ready to take over? Are we ready? Do we have the capacities? When we look, deep into ourselves, do we have the systems in place? Do we have policies? Because I bet the donors are not going to hand over to us the funds without the basic accountabilities and procedures and systems in place. So when you talk about leadership, are we ready to take on? Yes, I think we have the potential. I think there are a lot more organizations that are ready to take on. And I think for me, I'm looking at, increasing and building the momentum so that we have a lot more organizations. We have a lot more national and local organizations that are able to come and claim leadership, and they are ready and fit to take over.
Yes, John.
It was a very acute observation, I think, on day one, that actually the only single benefit that we can think of the COVID epidemic is the fact that it has empowered local organizations. It has required them to step up, because the international organizations are not flying in to solve their problems. And maybe this is can be presented as an opportunity that needs to be seized in line with Rahima's recent points.
I don't know if it's me, but I'm hearing that there's this the local people need to seize power, but also it's Samreen's point that sometimes they need to be flexible in how they hand over that power. Is that a conflict? Is there a kind of challenge there? Like, is there something in that bit? When will that happen?
I think I can
Yes,
take that. Kate. So yesterday we had examples, I think it was from the Pacific or from the Philippines, where people are stepping up, especially with traditional ways of leading, traditional ways of taking care of each other, traditional ways that they have used in the past for dealing with conflict and also just for dealing with their lives. And we heard also this morning from Burkina Faso that because of war, that you haven't had access to go into some regions. They have had to use the local structures that are in place already in the communities. And so I think the fact is that there is some structures already in place, but maybe they need to be upscaled to the standard that they can actually be certified to demonstrate integrity and accountability that we are looking for when we are talking about accounts and money.
Bona.
I just want to say that, as we are saying, security region can force us to give opportunity to national organizations to work. COVID has forced us to give opportunity to national organizations to work and show their capacity. I think we don't need to be forced to do that. We need to create that space. Create the space, and capacities are there. We know that they will do what they have to do. Create the space. Somebody is asking what are the barriers in the sector for national organizations to take the power. We want them to take the power. We are seize the power, but we also need a space to be created that they can occupy and take and prove the capacity that they have that are not considered or recognized. That would be my point. Thank you.
So if I may just go around and do a quick kind of, final point circle, it'd be lovely if we can keep it like 20 seconds. Just one little thought, last thought. Who would like to go first? John?
Leadership should start listening a bit harder. All the voices are out there, but clearly the leadership has not been listening, and we're impatient.
Thank you. Adrian?
I will sound like a broken record. Power, at the moment, power sits with donors, again, all sense. And so they need to use this power meaningfully to make the systematic change that this sector needs to see happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Rima?
I want to encourage the local organizations to sign up for CHS. If it is not now, then when? Now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bona?
I just want to say it's a two-way power sharing and taking and spacing creating. It's two-way. Donors to make that happen, national organization to take what is there. Thank you.
Samreen?
So I just want to say that shifting the power is something very beautiful. Just try it and also empower your communities rather than to just help them. Thank you.
Stanley?
The word that comes to my mind is integrity. That what we are trying to enforce with the standards is integrity. But there are people who have integrity even before we come with the standards. And these are the people who should rise to the leadership.
Wonderful. I found this such a rich conversation. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking the cues, for asking for people to be in this dialogue. Thank you very much. And Stanley, I'm going to pass back to you. I think all of the dialogue people will be leaving now. I just want to, while we're waiting for the next people to come up, if you could put up my my audio cam, if that would be all right, people backstage. I just want to say that, you know, I'll put this again on the board, but these important summaries, the leadership needs to start listening. If you're local, step up. There are spaces there already ready to take the leadership. And the things that COVID have empowered local organizations and not national organizations to take that power, and to be ready. The potential is there. A really lovely discussions about, Sareem's talking about the local organizations need to work with the donors for timely support, and building in for Bona's idea about and Stanley's idea of this idea of capacity needs to be built before the disaster. And this other idea of listen, support, and consider, so that the resources are there and ready. So complex ideas, but with simple solutions, I feel, and that I really love this idea of the need for creating this space for discussions to move things forward. There seems to be lots of solutions already there. So thank you, Stanley.
Thank you, Kate. That's amazing discussions and reflections. Now we would like to come back to our board members, Robert Sweetman and Shama Mal, who we would like to reflect on the last 3 days we have had together, and we will start with Shama.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shama Mal, and I work with a national organization called Community World Service Asia as the Deputy Regional Director for Program and Organizational Development. So I'm based in Pakistan. I'm also the Vice Chair on the CHS Alliance Board of Governance. It's a real privilege to be here today to share some reflections from the first 2 days of the exchange. Coincidentally, the timing of the CHS exchange has coincided a week-long dedication and celebration to diversity in my organization, to appreciate and build more awareness around this issue, and to create a more enabling environment and culture change within our organization. And we were inspired with this idea from the last CHS exchange. So the speakers and panelists have challenged us a lot and left us with some very thought-provoking ideas. The importance of putting people first at the heart of our work came through loud and clear on day one. This needs to be consistent across all people we serve and engage with, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, ethnicity, and more. All lives matter. I sensed a sense of exasperation, and rightly so, as to why we are still having to justify inclusion. The CHS exchange has really put the spotlight on people's right to self-determination. And nothing about us, without us, communicates the sense of urgency that we must ensure we put people first in all our responses and interventions. And we have the CHS to help us ensure that we meet these obligations. The panelists have already discussed this aspect from various angles, and I would just like to add that in practical terms, for me, it also means, firstly, that our organizational culture and staff behaviors are conditioned in such a way that people-centered approaches underpin all our work, and we remain accountable to people. Our staff recruitment, development, and performance management system should support this. We use the core humanitarian competency framework that was developed by the CHS Alliance. It also means we work as a team with communities we serve, that we combine knowledge, skills, and resources and work towards a common goal. Community structures, local movements, local leadership, and advocates can be found in the remotest of communities, in my experience. Yes, they may need strengthening and supporting, as mentioned in the last discussion as well, but I think we have no excuse to impose our decisions and solutions on them. They must be part of planning, decision-making, and implementation of interventions. Secondly, nothing about us without us also implies that partnerships between stakeholders are empowering, they entail trust and are accountable, particularly towards communities and the national and local organizations that represent them closely. This was emphasized a lot by the national leadership as well on day 2. Our speakers have been outspoken about the structural, institutional, and political barriers that govern our sector and prevent the change we want to see from happening. However, inequality and power imbalances between us and the people we serve are having some very grave consequences in terms of sexual exploitation and abuse. So people-centered approaches are needed to better support survivors of sexual exploitation and abuse, as highlighted by Jane Connors in her keynote on day 1. Our feedback mechanisms need to be more robust and less complicated. And though we may have improved over the last many years, my board colleague Robert Sweatman in his opening remarks also reminded us that we need to do better on commitment 5, complaints are welcomed and addressed, as it's the lowest scores commitment as per verification data. The last year, I talked at the opening of the exchange about the need to reach a broader audience with these events and do far more to engage with national and local NGOs. I'm really pleased this year's event has taken this on board. The voices of national initiative leaders during this exchange have been very prominent. There have been many discussions that have focused on local and national organizations claiming their space. On day 2, there was a panel dedicated to them. They shared some wonderful examples of how local leadership is taking initiative, be it leading national consortia, redefining their role, fostering complementary partnerships with their funding partners and local communities. However, this needs to be more widely practiced. COVID-19 has proved that local organizations have the capability to respond to crisis and provide leadership. Having equal access to funding opportunities is a major challenge, and this prevents national local organizations from exercising leadership at the local level and leading response or other interventions. So they urged for new funding models that give national local organizations more access, such as pool fund mechanisms. Due diligence processes need to be designed in a way that they don't contribute towards more inequality between national and international organizations. Over the past year, the CHS Alliance has put in a lot of effort to reach out to and engage with national organizations, including the development of a framework to take the CHS closer to national organizations. And I hope that more and more national organizations can apply the CHS, including verify against it. This will support in meeting due diligence processes, which I hope donors can harmonize. And it can also be a driver to create the power change around accountability to people and in partnerships at all levels as well. I really hope that nothing about us without us doesn't just remain a trendy slogan or a hashtag, but we can use the CHS to commit to putting power back into the hands of the people that we serve. As a universal standard, the CHS offers us a framework to measure the extent to which our approaches are people-centered and how we can do better. And the upcoming revision of the CHS is an opportunity for us all to participate and be even more bold in bringing the changes that are needed for more equitable partnerships at all levels. We need to move from rhetoric to action. We all know what the problems are, what are feeding the problems, so we need to focus more on the how we can overcome the barriers. It's time to be bold and challenge the structures that are hindering the change we aspire to. We need to foster collective action at all levels that is built upon trust, equality, and accountability. So let's be a part of the CHS Alliance and help gain more momentum in pushing for the changes that are needed. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Yama. A couple of reflections from today. I realise our time is nearly up, but just to say that just following Kate's excellent reflections is going to be a hard act to follow. I think for me, it's what Rahim was saying as well. Young Eggman's challenge of why not commit to the CHS, if not when, was really a rallying cry for us all. And for those at this exchange who have yet to do so, maybe now is the time. Commit, apply, and verify. There are other challenges too. To donors, we talked about putting people at the centre, not the taxpayers or tabloids. Maximise the funding to those we're trying to assist, not the auditors or duplicative due diligence processes. Rationalise reporting, think collective action. To us in the sector, put the people we're trying to assist at the centre, not on promoting ourselves, our market share, but on what's best for them. Again, think collective action. And Jan's recent Afghan experience, where he heard from those women in the displacement camp, was surely a salutary lesson for us all. Are we really listening and responding? That's the key. Not just listen, we have to respond to the people we're trying to assist. And in Jan's words, do we need to see a quantum leap in this area? And yes, we have made progress since the World Humanitarian Summit, but more is needed. The participation revolution really does need to happen, and it is revolution. In the later workshop, there was an observation that we need to take AAP to the next level. That there's reams of AAP guidance and frameworks. We've got tools, including the CHS, need to start using them, but also need adaptive management underpinning our responses. And that takes leadership, which we've mentioned a lot in the last hour, but also donors to provide necessary funding flexibility. We need to measure our collective progress, and the AAP results tracker that the CHS Alliance is piloting is a very encouraging step in that direction. Lots of observations on the need to listen better to people and communities we're trying to assist and then respond. Now, this was from yesterday. The workshop looking at what Nexus and Loop are doing in Somalia was really encouraging. The technology approaches that Loop are developing could well be a catalyst for delivering that participation revolution. So what next for the CHS Alliance and the CHS? For the CHS Alliance, we're in the process of developing a new CHS Alliance strategy, which will be published in February 2022. And for the revision of the standard, as you heard on the opening session, with the 3 standards copyright holders, the revision process starts early in 2022. And on the basis of the many comments and suggestions made at that session, we'll have an interesting and lively consultation process ahead of us. So finally, on behalf of the board and the CHS Alliance Secretariat, I'd like to thank all the speakers, to thank Stanley, Kate and Alessandra, and to thank you, the participants, because without you, there wouldn't be an exchange. I hope that you've been challenged and inspired intellectually, but also challenged and inspired to take action to raise the bar on quality and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for summing that up so well. Everyone, it's come to the end of these 3 days, and the other speakers have summed up way better than I could. So it just falls on me to throw some gratitude at this hugely impressive movement that has crescendoed this conversation, believing passionately that we can create that revolution that's needed. To give that gratitude, I'd like to thank our amazing board members, Sharma and Robert, for their previous comments, but to all the CHS Alliance board members who've engaged in this event, the CHS Alliance's board's passionate leadership for this movement, the Alliance, is really incredible. A sincere thanks to our keynote speakers, Jane Connors and Jan Egeland, for their inspirational talks, but I think as well you'd all agree for their kind of frank responses to your questions as well. Thank you to all the expert panelists who've joined us from all across the world. There was so much wisdom and a lot of practical advice as well shared over those sessions. A real immense recognition to all the members and speakers and organisers of the workshops over the last 3 afternoons. There is a humongous amount of work that goes into these, and so a huge amount of gratitude for those efforts. It really relies on the membership showing their commitment to this alliance and running those workshops for us. But none of this happens without some passionate and incredible backstage work. So thank you to Kate, who managed an incredible feat, I think you'll all agree, of trying to summarize all those really fascinating and deep conversations in such an energetic and clear way, as well as the wonderful, beautiful work of Alexandra, who provided a time free to capture those graphics for us. Stanley, thank you so much for all the excellent guidance that you've done over the last 3 days, keeping us on track and together. And the wonderful Maximise Your Time team for all the incredible work they do and getting us all here and helping us navigate this new virtual world with such ease. Thank you to the signers, an incredible feat, especially keeping up with all our many acronyms. A huge thank you. And my final shout out and thank you to the team here at the Secretariat. They've contributed a huge amount over the last year in prepping this event, but a special mention to Rosa and Bethan, who were the real engine rooms of trying to keep us all on track and pull us all together for this conversation. And thank you, as Robert said, to the audience, for yourselves, the participants, because of course, without you, we don't have an exchange. So with that, thank you and goodbye. Let's keep driving that momentum and honouring the commitments we've made to people affected by crisis. Thank you and goodbye.